She found out on a Tuesday, not from anyone telling her, from a photo. 12 people she thought were her friends, at a dinner she didn't know was happening, at a restaurant she had walked past 100 times, laughing, someone's birthday, candles, the whole thing. She sat with her phone in her hands for a long time. Then she called her sister, and her sister said, "I mean, maybe they just forgot. You know how these things are. You're probably overthinking it." She hung up, and something happened in that moment that she wouldn't be able to name for years. The dinner had hurt, but that phone call, that stayed. There is something that happens when you bring someone your pain and they hand it back to you smaller. Not because they wanted to hurt you, not because they didn't love you, just because they didn't know what to do with it. So they did the only thing they could think of. They minimized it, tidied it away, told you it was smaller than it felt so that everyone could move on. And you stood there holding something that had just been made to feel like nothing. And you made a decision, quietly, without even realizing you were making it, that you would not bring this to anyone again. That is the second wound. Not the dinner, the phone call. Here is what nobody talks about. Rejection is survivable. The human heart is remarkably good at surviving rejection, at sitting with pain, at processing it slowly, at eventually finding a way to carry it without it crushing you. But dismissal is different. Dismissal doesn't give you a wound to heal. It gives you a question to carry. The question is, what's wrong with me that this hurts so much? And that question, that specific question, is so much harder to survive than the original pain. Because pain has a location. It lives somewhere. You can point to it. But a question about your own validity lives everywhere. It gets into the way you tell stories, the way you decide what's worth mentioning, the way you look at your own feelings before you share them and think, is this too much? Am I too much? That is what dismissal does. It doesn't heal the wound. It hides it somewhere you can't reach.
There was a boy, maybe you know someone like him, maybe you were him, who got cut from the team. Not the best team, just a school team. The one he'd been practicing for since he was 9 years old. He was 13 when it happened. His coach handed him a list with his name not on it and said, "Better luck next year. Keep working hard." He went home and told his father. His father looked up from what he was doing and said, "That's life, son. You dust yourself off and try again. That's what men do." And his father wasn't a bad man. He genuinely believed he was giving his son something useful, resilience, perspective, the kind of toughness that gets you through hard things. But his son heard something different. He heard, pain is weakness, feeling it is weakness, and talking about it is the weakest thing of all. He didn't cry about the team, not in front of anyone. He didn't talk about it again. And 20 years later, he still has trouble telling the people closest to him when something hurts. Not because nothing hurts, because somewhere between 13 and now, he learned that the correct response to pain is to absorb it quietly and keep moving. His father taught him that, without meaning to, in one sentence, on one afternoon.
This is how the inheritance works. It doesn't arrive dramatically. It doesn't come from one catastrophic moment of cruelty. It arrives in the small, ordinary moments. The phone call that lasted 4 minutes. The father who looked up briefly before looking away. The friend who changed the subject. The partner who said, "You're so sensitive," with just enough affection in their voice that it almost felt like a compliment. It accumulates. And what it accumulates into is a person who has learned slowly and thoroughly that their inner life is not safe to share. Not with the world. Sometimes not even with themselves. Think about the last time you tried to tell someone something hurt you. Not a big thing. One of the quiet ones. Being left out of something. A message that never came back. A moment where someone you cared about made you feel invisible without knowing they did it. Think about how carefully you chose your words. How you watched their face while you were talking. How you were already adjusting the story based on their expression before you finished telling it, making it smaller, funnier, more casual, less desperate. Because somewhere along the way, you learn that your pain has to be acceptable before you're allowed to share it. You learn that from the first person who handed it back to you smaller, and then the second person, and then the third, until you stopped waiting for them to do it and started doing it yourself first. And yet we keep doing it to each other. Not because we're cruel, because we're uncomfortable. Someone else's unresolved pain is deeply uncomfortable to sit with. It asks something of you. It asks you to stay in a difficult place with no solution and no exit and no way to make it better. And most people were never taught how to do that. Nobody showed them. Their own pain was dismissed, so they never learned what it feels like to be truly heard, which means they have no map for how to offer that to someone else. So they reach for the closest tool they have, which is the thing someone said to them when they were in pain. Get over it. You're too sensitive. It's not a big deal. It could be worse. At least you have. It wasn't even said to hurt you. It was said to make the discomfort stop. And it did. For them. But you were still standing there, holding your original pain plus the new weight of having been told it wasn't real. And when it happens enough times, when enough people hand your pain back smaller, something shifts that you don't notice shifting. You stop waiting for them to dismiss you. You become your own dismisser. You feel something hurt, and before it's even finished arriving, you're already in your own head telling yourself, this is too much. This is embarrassing. Other people have it worse. I should be over this by now. Why am I like this? What is wrong with me? You do to yourself in seconds what used to take another person to do to you. And you do it thoroughly, efficiently, without mercy, because you had very good teachers. That is the real inheritance of being told to get over it. Not that you got over it, that you started doing it to yourself. And now you carry two wounds everywhere you go, the original one and the one you give yourself every time you decide the original one isn't worth acknowledging. The cruelest part is how invisible it becomes. After enough years of this, it stops feeling like something you're doing. It starts feeling like something you are. You think you're just low maintenance, just private, just someone who doesn't need much from others. But that's not low maintenance. That's someone who learned that needing things is dangerous. There's a difference. And it matters. Because low maintenance by choice feels like freedom. Low maintenance by conditioning feels like loneliness with good posture.
So, if you have been carrying something, not just the original wound, but the quieter, stranger weight of never having been allowed to take it seriously, I want you to try something. Not a breathing exercise, not a reframe, not a list of 5 steps, just this. Say the thing out loud, even just to yourself, even just in your head right now, in whatever room you're sitting in. That hurt me. Not, that probably hurt me more than it should have. Not, that hurt me even though I know it shouldn't have. Not, I'm probably being too sensitive, but that hurt me. Just, that hurt me. No qualification. No apology for the size of it. No preemptive shrinking before someone else gets the chance to shrink it for you. Because here is the thing about pain that nobody tells you. It doesn't need to be justified to be real. It doesn't need to meet a threshold. It doesn't need to be approved by the person who caused it, or the person you told about it, or the voice in your head that sounds suspiciously like everyone who ever told you that you were too much. It just needs to be acknowledged. By you. First. Before anyone else. Even if no one else ever does. She never called her sister about that kind of thing again. A lot of us stopped calling a long time ago. Not because the people we called were bad, but because we learned, one phone call at a time, one changed subject at a time, one you're overthinking it at a time, that certain things were only safe to carry alone. That was the wrong lesson, but it made complete sense at the time. And the fact that it made sense, the fact that you adapted, that you adjusted, that you found a way to keep going even while quietly learning to disappear your own pain, that says something about you. It says you are someone who survived the people who are supposed to help you hold things. That is not a small thing. You were not too sensitive. You were not too much. You were someone who felt something real and brought it to the wrong person at the wrong moment and learned the wrong lesson from what they said. The lesson was, my feelings are a problem. The truth is, their discomfort with your feelings was the problem. Those are not the same thing. They were never the same thing. And the distance between those two sentences, that distance is where you get to start again. Not from the beginning, just from here. With one thing acknowledged, finally. Without apology. That hurt me. And it was allowed to.